in this random video, I want to talk to you about a topic that I've got a hell of a lot of information about, and I know a hell of a lot of things about for one or another reason, and I'm very passionate about it. And also working within the field, because outside of YouTube, I do also work in the Formula One industry, and that is what we're talking about in this little video. Formula One and its unfair advantage, and how the sport is essentially about finding the unfair advantage to outdo and beat other teams and essentially have the fastest car and the fastest driver. And this video is more so for people who don't know about the sport as much, but even if you know about the sport, you might enjoy this because there's some very interesting stories and some very interesting findings. Basically, it's just some very interesting fun facts, I reckon. For those of you who aren't massive fans of the sport or don't know too much about the sport or the background of it, it's, believe it or not just about the cars racing around the track, do you know what I mean? And that's it, that's everything that is to it. And all of the cars don't have the same engines, all of the cars don't have the same pads, they haven't got the same access to aerodynamics and wind tunnels and things like that. They all have their own facilities, they all have their own teams, engineers, people it's a massive industry for those people that don't know. And I work in the industry, so I see it on a daily basis, do you know what I mean? And it's a huge business, just like football, don't get me wrong. Each one of these teams, each one of these engines, each one of these cars that you see on the track has been designed by very smart people, engineers, etc., people who devoted their lives to this sort of thing, to aerodynamics, to design, etc., right? And that basically then leads you on to having 10 to 12 teams who have the best possible people they can have for that role in that company on the car. And so some of those pads on those cars have to be in certain dimensions. They have to be in certain shapes, certain sizes, certain weights, etc., right, on the car. And that's the sort of standard that's been standardized amongst each single season, right? Because they have a FIA rulebook. FIA is the governing body of the sport of Formula One, just like FIFA is for football, basically, right? And what you then have is engineers, designers, like, for example, some legendary ones like Gordon Murray, Adrian Newey, etc., right? John Barnard, for example, he was a good one that I've also quite liked from the past, for those of you that know. And they try and flick through that rulebook many times and find little pockets and holes and things they could poke up to try and see if they can just go around those rules, while still just being sat on their wall between breaking the rules and still being within the rule boundaries. And so you then end up with very strange looking cars, very strange designed pads, very strange ideas popping into these designers' heads to, get that unfair advantage and maximize the speed of their car paired up with the best driver, because we all know that it's not just about the driver and it isn't just about the car. You need to have the perfect pairing, like the Red Bull have in the last few years with Max Verstappen, like they have had with Sebastian Vettel back in the day, like Lewis Hamilton was at Mercedes. You need that perfect pairing. You can't win championship with just a quick car, and you can't win it with just a quick driver, okay? So I think we need to end that conversation. You do then end up with some very strange looking cars, and I'm going to give you some examples and put some examples on the screen for you and give you a little info about them and why they were designed like that, and who designed them and why they were designed like that, essentially. Literally, I'm just going to stand here for a bit and just admire this view and tell you about some of these F1 cars from the past. This is the view, by the way. This is the view. It's honestly very decent, to say the least. So, Exhibit A, we've got BT45 Brabham. So Brabham BT45, also known as the fan car, was designed by the man, the myth, the legend himself, Gordon Murray, who is one of the most iconic designers, by the way. If you don't know, he's the man who designed McLaren F1 car, all right? And not just the actual F1 car, but the actual road car, McLaren F1. One of the most iconic, legendary supercars ever created. And man, I love that car. The look of that car is just, you can't beat that. And it's not just the looks, but also the functionality. When it comes to lightweightness of these cars and the size, the proportion, the handling, like, that car has dominated Le Mans, it dominated other endurance series without even being designed for racing. The car was just designed to be quick enough on the roads, to be dynamic, to be lightweight, but naturally, by designing a car that's perfect in all of those boundaries, he designed a car that's perfect for racing. So isn't that an interesting little side quest story as well. So anyway, this designer at the time worked for Brabham, who was actually, another fun fact, owned by Bernie Ecclestone, who was the person who owned Formula One before Liberty Media took over, right? Liberty Media are essentially the group of guys that have publicized the sport with like the whole Drive to Survive Netflix and all the different American races they've got in America now, and just making more money essentially and getting more eyes on it, right? So Bernie Ecclestone, who owned Formula One and owned Brabham at one point, which is a bit of a conflict of interest, isn't it? When you own an F1 team, but you also own the actual sport itself, which was pretty crazy. And then he essentially sold the sport later on, made insane amounts of money, had another child at the age of 90 or something crazy like that. But the story is that with his Brabham BT45, Gordon Murray has designed a car which had a massive fan on the back which would suck the air out from underneath the car, similar way to how the cars work nowadays basically in F1, because it was a ground effect car, meaning a hot and cold air, like a low and high pressure air sort of, and suck the car to the floor. There probably is a much better way of explaining it, but if you are, just let me know in the comments, man. I would actually love to know that. It would be very interesting. And so when they were transporting this car as well to the track, when they were wheeling it onto the track from the pits, it had an actual bin lid from like a black bin that you see outside of your house. And they did that so the water doesn't get into it and so the competition doesn't actually see how this fan works. And the way that the fan worked was that it was connected to the actual belt, the drive belt of the engine and the drive chain of the engine essentially, right? And as the engine would spin up in high RPM, that's how fast the fan would spin. So the fan would spin as fast as the wheels are essentially spinning, as fast as the engine is essentially spinning, right? So there was a very weird characteristic to it, which I'm pretty sure Niki Lauda was talking about at the time, where instead of slowing down before you turn into the corner for the apex and then power out, what you would do, you would slow down a little bit, get into a lower gear, so you're in a very high RPM, so your fan is constantly spinning very, very quickly as you're going through the corner, providing you the maximum grip, maximum traction as you're going around this corner. Yeah, it was a very weird, strange characteristic, because you basically had to drive flat out through your corner that you normally wouldn't drive flat out through, because it would be dangerous and you would drive off a track, lose traction, oversteer, whatever. Do you know what I mean? And yeah, very strange, funky design like that has come up, and there is many others. I'm going to give you 2 more in this video, and then maybe we can make it an episode 2, and I might give you some more if you let me know in the comments that you want to see something like that. Now, another one which I'm going to give you is Renault in 2005 and 2006. I'm not sure which specific year this one was, but essentially it was one of those 2 cars which Alonso has driven to win the championships in both of those years. And basically that car had at one point launch control, so it would automatically actually launch itself without the need of a driver launching himself and timing the lights changing from red to green. It would automatically match somehow the car to the lights, and as soon as they turn green, the car would go. The car would just automatically go, and it would eliminate the human error of starting too late or stalling the car, etc. And yeah, do you know how they found out? Basically, Formula One did a false start on purpose in order to catch out the teams which they thought were using this at the time. And it wasn't just Renault who was using this. There was another team, I can't remember who it was right now. Maybe let me know in the comments if you know. But another team in 2005 or 6 has also used that. And they've all been caught out, essentially. As soon as the lights went out, it was a false start. And I think it was 4 or 6 cars went at the exact same time, and the rest of the field was stood stationary. And that's how they discovered that cheat. So, yeah, very, even from FIA, that was a very, very funky way of dealing with it. That car also had, that same 2005-2006 car of Renault also had something called mass air damper. So basically what it is it's like a damper that you would see in a skyscraper, right? So if you look at those pictures of the inside of the skyscraper where it's got a massive ball hanging in the middle, it's like a counterbalance, like a counterweight, which as the building swings in the high winds, it sort of counterbalances it so that it doesn't lean to one side too much, it doesn't vibrate, etc. That's how it worked in the F1 car, right? So the 2005 and 2006 Renault car had a, I'm pretty sure, a suspended ball inside, or multiple suspended balls on this damper inside the front wing of the car. So if you look at the footage from the front wing of the car from, say, 2005, when Alonso was racing against Michael Schumacher in Ferrari, you can see that the Ferrari going over the curbs, over the apexes, is a lot shakier than Fernando Alonso's Renault, and that is because of this mass air damper. But the very interesting thing about this mass air damper also is that it was first used, I believe, I've heard this as a rumor, I don't know if it's true or not, I mean, you can fact check me in the comments, was on a 1997/1998 Renault Laguna in partnership with the Williams for the British touring car team. Because if you don't know, at the time, Williams was basically using Renault engines to dominate the 90s, essentially. Do you know what I mean? Nigel Mansell and Damon Hill and you name it. You know what I mean? So they've dominated with Renault engines. So they had this partnership where the Renault British touring car team, which is basically at the time, it was the Super Tourer regulations, which were super quick, crazy cars, believe it or not. And it was massive at the time. They actually trialed this before the F1 team had in 2005 and 2006. They have trialed it in 1997, 1998 on a road car looking like Renault Laguna race car, as you can see on the screen. If I can get a picture of it, maybe Jason Plato's 1997. If you lot know Jason Plato, he was a legendary British touring car driver who I think he reached 98 or 99 career wins and never got the 100, but he spent like something ridiculous, like 27 years in the British touring car almost, or something brutal like that. I've actually met him in person as well at one of the track days when I went to look at a British touring car race, and yeah, all I can say, he was probably in a bit of a rush there because didn't come across the best, but it is what it is, isn't it? We're all just people. And you can't hold that against anyone. He probably just didn't have a very good day. This last story I'm going to tell you about Brawn GP in 2009, all right? So Brawn GP in 2009 was a Formula One team which was bought by, as you can probably tell by the name, Ross Brawn. He was a team of principal at Ferrari at the time, and he was the main engineer as well of the engineering department at Ferrari at the times when Michael Schumacher was winning. So he was a part of that team, of the whole Jock Clear, Schumacher, Ross Brawn trio, etc. So there was a team. It was called BAR and later on Honda, which was in Formula One, and they were not doing very well at the time. So what Ross Brawn has offered to the team, because Honda wanted to pull out of the sport eventually anyway, and they've actually had a very good car built for the 2009 season, because the way F1 works is you got build seasons, which is usually from the end of the next season until the start of next one, and you essentially have a very few months to build from scratch a brand new F1 car, right? So they've managed to build one, and as they were testing it before the season, they saw that the car was quick, but Honda has just decided they're going to pull out of the sport. So what the absolute legend of fucking Ross Brawn did, he went over to Honda and basically said, I'm going to buy the team off you for £1. And he did it, and he bought the team for £1, and he run the team, and the team didn't have a hell of a lot of money, because you can imagine it is super expensive running an F1 team, especially back in the day when there was no budget caps. Where now at least they have budget caps. Back then it was pretty much fucking unlimited money, which was crazy, like testing after every race and stuff like that, like they did in the early 2000s, which I can't even imagine how much that would cost. And so Ross Brawn run that team on £1 under the branding of Brawn GP, with Jenson Button and Rubens Barrichello as the drivers. And Jenson Button ended up winning that championship in a car which had hell of a lot of unfair advantages. I think the car was using KERS at the time as well, which is kinetic energy recovery system, which was an actual button you could press to get like a power boost essentially on track, which was very funky. And the way we recharge was through your kinetic energy. So it was through your battery and through your brakes and whatever kinetic energy your battery can recollect essentially from your car. So that's all gone now. We don't have that in F1 now. Now it's DRS, which is drag reduction system, which is when the rear wing opens on the car, essentially, right? And so that Brawn GP car, which was originally designed by Honda, actually had a hell of a lot of these advantages, like with the KERS. It had blown rear diffuser, which is something that Red Bull has then taken away from them afterwards and perfected, as with Adrian Newey, when Sebastian Vettel has dominated and won all of those titles in the early 2010s. And this blown diffuser was something that other teams haven't caught on to up until later on in the season, when they started actually being quicker than Brawn GP, but they managed to dominate the early beginnings of the season so much that they've collected enough points to basically win the championship. And it was getting a bit sketchy at times, where they were getting pretty destroyed by other teams because they didn't obviously have the budget to upgrade the car. And if you're new to the sport and you don't know how it is, the car that you start with at the beginning of the season, you don't end with that car. Do you know what I mean? At the end of the season, it's a completely different car, different floors, different front wings, rear wings, upgrades, different internal parts, etc. So you especially if you're a front running team, if you're a back running team, you sometimes just end up cutting your losses and spending the money and the time and the resources that you've got on next season's car as opposed to your current season's car, basically. And so they didn't have the money for this development, and obviously the car did end up falling by the wayside eventually, but all it took was to win one more race, which they did. I'm pretty sure Jenson Button won the Belgium Grand Prix. And yeah, he won the championship, his one and only championship. But I mean, how many championships did we win? Do you know what I mean? And he was actually a pretty sound lad, I reckon. I've always liked seeing him on the grid back in the day. But yeah, this Brawn GPF1 car looked awesome as well. It's very iconic and synonymous with almost no sponsors on it at all, because like I said, they did everything on the cheap and on the quick, and they just had to do it ASAP, and no one was going to sponsor them because they were a £1 team. Do you know what I mean? And how many £1 teams in the history of Formula One do you know of that just went on to win the first seasons they've taken over a team? I don't know any other one, and I know a hell of a lot of teams who have financially struggled and had massive budgets, like the Toyota teams, like the BMW, Williams, etc. So yeah, hats off to them, I reckon. Hats off to them. Do you know what I mean? If you can do something like that, it's not a lot of things you can do. But anyway, let me know what you thought of this little Formula One ramble, and if you enjoyed me just nerding out on Formula One, essentially, because I could talk about this for hours. I've got so many different topics and races and specific drivers and specific cars I could talk about. And even on this, we could make this a little series, Unfair Advantage series. Let me know if you would want to watch that. And I'm just tripping up on the floor here now because I'm just walking all over the place. Hope you've enjoyed the video. Let me know what you thought of it in the comment section down below. I'm going to enjoy some more of this view, and then I'm going to head back. So yeah, have a lovely rest of your weekends, because I'm filming this on a weekend, believe it or not. And yeah, subscribe to the channel, because there's going to be a lot more topics, countries, places that I'll be visiting. And yeah, I want to take you on this journey with me. So yeah, I'll see you lot in a bit.